Angry Bootneck wants to talk about war. This should be fun. So, Mr. Bootneck, take it away.
Whatto, chaps? How's it going? Listen, this is going to get a bit heavy today. We're going to talk about war. What is it good for? Good for your bank account. Good for stimulating the economy if you've got a lot of great arms companies like we do out in the States. No, it's not very good for much, is it? I'm merely exhibiting that commando spirit we talk about, which the most important of them all is definitely sense of humour in adversity. I was always able to laugh everything off. I think it's more important than anything else. Grim black humour is what it's our bread and butter in the British military. The Americans are the same. They're just not quite as good at it as we are. But the fact is,
I'm usually pretty good at understanding Britbonger accents, but this guy's accent is, wow.
it's a grim subject, and I'm going to have to do a bit of a dive into it because one of my subscribers sent me this message saying, when I was talking about our Bootneck's law of if the BBC asks you a fucking question, if they end a headline in a question, 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. That's just the BBC because they're a ridiculous.
That's not a BBC rule. That's like journalism in general. If a journalist ends a headline with a question mark, the answer is often no.
Ridiculously left-wing news organisation, but sent me a message saying the SAS executed civilians, children, and elderly Afghans. That's the bitter truth. We had a bit of a set to, obviously, argued the point, and then she sent me a link, which I dutifully watched, and yeah, shocking stuff, really. So I'm going to talk about it. I have a lot of experience in that arena. I deployed 5 times. I went to Afghanistan twice. I went to Iraq twice. Typically, I don't talk about war all the time on my channel because, I'm a good humoured chap. I like to keep things light and just, survive on mockery, piss taking, and general good humour. When you've spent 10 years of your life waging constant war, causing death, misery and annihilation, straddling the battlefield like a mighty colossus from the days of yore.
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. Take the military-industrial complex dick out of your mouth.
You like to be a bit more light and chill when you're a civvy, Now I'm a strawberry mivvy. I like to keep things relaxed and good-humoured. But fuck it. I'm one of those stoic types who doesn't suffer with PTSD or any of that kind of thing. Just my own opinion. That does seem to be a lot more common with National Guardsmen and people that were so far in the rear they had to send the fucking laundry forwards. And I think that's purely down to a result of your training. I think the more training you do, I'd love to know the figures. I don't think there's any really good official studies, but I think SAS, Special Forces, Commandos, guys who are basically trained to fight for a living, I'd be very surprised if their PTSD levels were anywhere near as high as people who aren't doing kinetic operations all the time, because
it might also have something to do with people in these special forces units are basically trained to sublimate their emotions. They are taught to completely ignore any kind of emotional reaction or attachment they might have. Yeah, it's not good or healthy. I have an uncle who was a Green Beret, and he is, unless it's anger, certain kinds of humor, or love for his wife, he does not show emotion. It's completely not robotic. Like he's not a robot. He's just, I guess sarcasm. Rather than humor, it's sarcasm. He's constantly got like a little sardonic smirk on, and yes, he is a Trump supporter.
frankly, after 5 tours of duty, I still only ever have nightmares about my basic training. I had a couple of dreams for the first few months after my second Afghan tour, which was the most wary one, where we were out constantly doing advanced to contact patrols. Nearly every single time we went on the fucking patrol, we got engaged
Like, I want to speed this guy up, but then I'm worried no one will be able to understand him.
by the enemy. Went through a ton of fucking brass, bombed the fucking shit out of them, and then back to base for tea and stickies. It was an emotional fucking tour, and even that, I had a few dreams when I got back, but it's not troublesome. It's just one of those things. Nearly got blew up when I was having a shit. When there was 107mm.
He's telling irrelevant stories, so I'm going to talk about his discussion about SF people not having PTSD as much as like National Guardsmen. And I think it's because, again, like special forces are being trained to kill and to treat the enemy as non-human, whereas guards people, who are, what are somewhat uh, usually disparagingly referred to as weekend warriors, aren't steeped in it quite as much. So they have more empathy, so they're more likely to view uh, dangerous situations as with more empathy, and empathize more with the people they're dealing with, rather than these more you know um, I keep overusing the term special forces, but regular army, the grunts or whatever that this guy is lionizing, are more heavily indoctrinated into that idea of the enemy is not human and they deserve this or whatever, which is another big issue with the military.
Rockets land on your base, they are scary because all you can hear is like a ear splitting as they get closer in, and then there's like
I agree, Abu Hashish, that whole attitude of the enemy is non-human is a terrible, disgusting attitude.
a brief second there where you just don't know where it's going to land, and you're just thinking, "There's fuck all I can do here." It's just a lottery. If this lands on me, I'm fucked. That's quite scary. Indirect fire was always more scary than actual direct fire from insurgents trying to fill me full of holes with a fucking AK-47. Because, frankly, I quickly realised that
Now I
most of
understand
those
why this
cunts
video
could
is 30
fair
minutes long.
distance or a style. You know, I had to get a bit old and we didn't worry too much about it. Unless you did actually get shot. Like my mate there, who took one in the arse, tore his thigh up. You know, ironically, if someone wasn't really badly injured, we used to take a photo of them doing the thumbs up and put them on the helo. If the medics had stabilised them and said, listen, they're not going to die, it's not a critical injury. It's like, fuck me, like, we just thought we could laugh everything off. We sort of seem to think if you got a 7.62 round through your ass and it burst out your fucking thigh but missed your femoral artery, we thought, you'd be doing hill sprints in a fortnight. And that's not the case. I do look at some of my old photos on my hard drive and think, we were so blasé about death. Like, we used to always be laughing and joking. If someone got badly injured, or even if the worst happens, you always have to try and look on the bright side. And nobody ever wants, you don't want your oppos to think of them all being devastated if you get killed in action. So you do have a really grim, sort of humorous look on life when you're there, because what's the point in worrying about it? But yeah, it was a strange time. Anyway, don't want to bore you by swinging the lantern, but I will say,
Thank you for spending 5 minutes swinging the lantern, I guess. But I mean, this, from what I understand from people I've known in combat situations, this is pretty common. This gallows humor idea, because death is all around you.
I did have to do a bit of self-reflection here because my initial response to this ridiculous BBC story, written in the same cowardly, guilty as charged, if you're a soldier and you do anything wrong, nail your bollocks to the kitchen table straight away. But if you're a fucking illegal immigrant, or you happen to be brown and you stab someone in the eye, or fucking murder or rape an old woman, then they want to understand. Then they want to say, oh yeah, but did he have a bad childhood? Is he a drug addict? Is he suffering from PTSD because he was abused?
Wait, I don't think I understood the first part of that.
Nail your bollocks to the kitchen table straight away. But if you're a fucking illegal, in the same cowardly, guilty as charged, if you're a soldier and you do anything wrong, nail your bollocks to the kitchen table straight away. But if you're a fucking illegal immigrant,
This is because we expect our armed forces to behave in a higher standard than civilians. Like, you can't claim all this military privilege and then be mad when we treat you with a greater expectation of behavior. Like, that's exactly what's happening, is that when you're in the military, whether you're a weekend warrior or a decorated Green Beret, there's a certain expectation of behavior, certain rules of engagement you're supposed to engage in, and these include not murdering civilians. So when we hear about military personnel killing unarmed civilians, or what have you, yes, we expect them to be held accountable for it, because they are they're ostensibly trained to handle these situations. Whereas when we have a civilian, maybe a random immigrant, or brown person, as he so eloquently put it, they don't necessarily have that training. So it's up to yes, there may be extenuating circumstances for that action. And I know what a lot of these bootlickers like to say. They're extenuating actions for when the for when the military people kill these people. Sure, there might be. That can come out in the trial in your defense, motherfucker. Just like these defenses for people committing these crimes in in civilian life, these come out in the defense. That's why they're called mitigating circumstances. And I will admit, I have a tiny, teeny, eeny, weeny bit of empathy for people like soldiers in Vietnam who were unclear who the enemy were thanks to the Viet Cong's tactics. I still don't support them burning villages and killing women and children because they didn't know who was allied with the Viet Cong. That's still gross abuses and crimes.
Or you happen to be brown and you stab someone in the eye, or fucking murder or rape an old woman, then they want to understand. Then they want to say, oh yeah, but did he have a bad childhood? Is he a drug addict? Is he suffering from PTSD because he was abused as a boy? They want to give you all the leeway possible if you fit their identity politics narrative. But if you're a white working class man in the fucking military, which is poor, not privileged people, from some of them, for the boys from the Mersey and the Thames and the Tyne, poor working class lads make up the mainstay of our fucking boots on the ground, and they don't want to give them any leeway. So it does annoy me. Again, I think I'm a centrist, reasonable fella, and I'm happy to hold my hands up when I think the military have fucked up, as I'm about to do now. But it's the lack of consistency on their part that disgusts me. If he's an illegal immigrant, he rapes an old woman, they want to know. They want to know how we can empathise with him and understand his story.
I'm getting really ticked off at him constantly obliquely referencing the rape gangs, which are only rape gangs if you don't pay attention to fucking race. The vast majority of rapes in the UK are committed by white people, but you wouldn't know that if you listen to the news or whatever, because they're going to go on and on about the Muslim rape gangs, and that's what he's obliquely referencing here.
In all his trials and tribulations, but when someone like Alexander Blackman, who was at my unit, when he kills a man, they just want him back to rights. They say that is a murderer, he's a savage, 25 years doing for murder. And that's the crux of the sore point with me, with the lefty types. They only want to know the extenuating circumstances. They only want to know why, if you fit the victim narrative. If you're a white working class man, even if you...
Holy shit, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through this whole video. First of all, he's boring as fuck, going off on tangents. And second of all, he's completely ignoring the fact that as a member of the Royal Marines, you were taught how to engage with people and how to properly and responsibly handle your engagements with these civilians and enemy combatants. You're not just some random schmuck grabbed off the street, shoved in a uniform, and handed a rifle. You went through weeks and weeks of training on how to engage in these situations. That's why we hold you to a higher standard. That's why the default assumption, that's why, at least in the US, there's a greater, there's a lesser degree of mitigation in these circumstances for crimes committed in uniform, because you're expected to behave a certain way when you're in uniform. It's as simple as that. It's not a victim narrative. It's not identity politics, because there's a lot of black and brown people in uniform these days. It's civilian versus military. It's trained versus not trained.
From a town like Middlesbrough, and you're a son of a single parent, because my mum died when I was a little kid, and I was raised by a fucking welder in the shittest town in England, and got shitty GCSEs from a shitty comprehensive school. They don't think you're a victim, and I don't feel like one, because I'm not a fucking pussy, but they only want to understand your trials and tribulations if you aren't a straight white man. It's laughable on the face of it, right? I don't, like I've said many times before, I'm not particularly right-wing on crime. I understand cause and effect. There are always extenuating circumstances that they should be explored. But it just staggers me that I'm willing to apply that principle across the board. They're only willing to apply that principle if you happen to fit the little pigeonhole they want to put you into. If you're not part of the LGBT
This is just completely untrue and boring besides.
community, and fuck about extenuating circumstances. If you're a white Brexiteer, they don't give a fuck what happens. They just want you nailed into the bastard wall. So anyway, tirade over. Let's get down to business.
See, it's important to note that one of the major reasons why he can make this narrative is because the white Brexiteer often doesn't have mitigating circumstances and is just doing what he feels like doing. Oops, wrong button.
Actually, that was a bit grim. Let's have a couple of minutes of joviality to distract us before we crack on, shall we? Like Kevin and Karen throwing coffee at people for not wearing masks.
I hear you. It's okay. It's all right. I'm a business owner here for 30 years. I got it. I'm on Sepulveda. We only referral, but the business is Orbit, and we work for companies and government. Yeah, but it's okay. We don't work for residents in the environment. It's all right.
What are you looking at me for? I didn't say shit to you. Get the fuck out
Oh
of
no,
my face.
don't get hit. Oh gee, hey, Matt. Oh shit. That was dumb. Hey, guys, stop.
Okay?
You don't. Hey.
Fuck off me. Hey, stop. Get her off me. Get your girl off me. Get her off me.
You shouldn't have thrown the drink in his face.
Funny that. I'll tell you what, it's a uniquely southern sensibility in the UK, and I think most of America. They're very civilized, the Americans. They don't hit women. If that woman poked one into me like she did, just punched him in the face while he's fighting with a boyfriend, I'd have dropped her like a fucking bad habit. Like, I swear down, she would have gone down like a fucking knackered lift. Weird that, innit? Up north, it's the rule of the jungle, because
This is actually one thing I'll agree with him on. If I've always felt that if you have balls enough to swing on me, I get to swing back on you regardless of your gender. Now I would never, well, I don't want to say I would never hit anyone unprovoked, because I definitely would with enough provocation. I know my own anger enough like that. But, like, in this situation, yeah, I mean, this guy's a piece of shit anyway, because he should be wearing a fucking mask, if he's in public. But I don't know that it's kind of a complex issue, but I definitely, at least to some degree, agree that if you're gonna hit me, I get to hit you back in a situation like this. Now, I don't know that he should have beating the boyfriend in the first place. That's on me. But I also have never had hot coffee thrown on me. I also wouldn't be in the situation where someone who disagrees with me would throw hot coffee on me because I'm not that kind of person.
The bitches up north drink like fucking sailors, swear and fuck and fight like sailors. And frankly, if you're not willing to poke one into the cunt when they're windmilling on you with a fucking stiletto, you're probably going to lose an eye or a tooth or something. So, my old fella raised me and said, listen, don't hit women, but demand the same treatment. If a woman wants to fight you like a man, you fucking hit her like a man. I swear to God. Full disclosure, I've dropped several women over my long life. One of them was in Exmouth. She hit me over the head with a bottle. In fact, I'll tell you the stories. Fuck it. That'll cheer us up before we get in.
Are we gonna actually? This is 10 minutes in, and we haven't even gotten to the ostensible part of the video. I really don't care about you hitting a woman. I really don't.
I, chuckling over the fucking head with a bottle, just went boom and lifted her hand up to punch me. Rumours used to be. 2 coppers come running over, and I said she twatted me over the head with a bottle, and then raised her hand to have another go, so I dropped the cunt. I said, 'cause I'm a gentleman, I didn't give her a good fucking chewing, right? Gentlemen, I was very tempted to kick her in the fucking tits while she was down.
Thanks for the follow, Abu Hashish.
But I didn't, just like my old man said. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is known as the 3-second rule. If a woman assaults you, my dad taught me this, it always works. If a woman's swinging at you, throwing punches at you, give her 3 seconds to fucking wrap in. Turtle up, let her throw punches at you. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. And if they're still coming in, fucking drop the cunt. Self-defense, perfectly reasonable. I got my name took by the coppers for dropping a woman who just bottled me. No charges filed. Didn't even get a follow-up call. And I chinned one in a chip shop because she pinched my fucking chips. And when I said, "You've had enough chips, fatty," she started beating me up. And I'm there trying to protect the chips. She throws about fucking 13 punches at me and they're all bouncing off my head. And after about the fucking 10th punch, I just thought, 3-second rule, I'm going to have to ditch the chips. Whap! And at that point, she was like fucking Godzilla. I've told the story before. When fucking Malt started throwing punches at me. Right? Don't want anyone to let a woman punch me repeat. Short version, she got very fucking lucky. That neck alone, you fucking the serious stuff. So I was going to cover this in
14 minutes and 21 seconds of completely unnecessary twaddle. Holy shit, dude.
my BBC roundup, but it warrants a video of its own now. Did UK Special Forces execute unarmed civilians? No, 99 times out of 100, but here's where we get into some shady ground. It says, at the height of the war, 2 senior officers met in a bar to have a secret conversation. They feared some of the UK's most highly trained troops has adopted a deliberate policy of illegally killing unarmed men. That's not true. It's not going to be a deliberate policy, is it? 2 officers were 1,000 miles from dust.
There's a reason why it was in quotation marks. They were either quoting someone, or it was one of those unofficial deliberate policies that are all over the fucking military. So just like I already referenced in Vietnam, where the GIs in the jungle would treat just about any Vietnamese man as a potential enemy combatant, the same issue they're having in Afghanistan and other Middle Eastern nations, where any man could be a member of any person, because ISIS doesn't. Well, they are pretty misogynistic, so it probably is any man, but any person could be a member of ISIS. So again, while I have a tiny bit of empathy for these people, their actions are responsible for the creation of ISIS and the perpetuation of it. So I don't have a lot of empathy for people who just indiscriminately kill people because they might be a member of ISIS. That's some terrible bullshit.
And danger of Helmand province in Afghanistan. They returned from the war where his troops reported their understanding of an execution-style killing carried out by special forces. HQ read reports of growing concern, said there was a sharp rise in number of enemies killed in action by UKSF. After the conversation, briefing note believed to have been written by one of the most senior members of the UKSF was passed up the chain of command, and the message contained clear warnings for the highest levels, concluding that these concerning allegations merited deeper investigations to put a stop to criminal behaviour. The documents were released to solicit a lay day as part of an ongoing case at the High Court. The man bringing the case is Salifa Garabia. He says that 4 members of his family were assassinated. Don't believe a word of it. Panorama said they work with the Sunday Times Inside team to reveal evidence of a pattern of illegal killings. Basically, right, this is where I'm going to talk about nuance. The vast majority of these cases are ambulance chasing lawyers and Afghans knowing they can exploit this situation to make a large sum of money. There are exceptions, but going into a house and executing a fucking family doesn't happen. It doesn't. What these people need to realise is our soldiers are normal lads. Normal working class blokes who do a bit of training. That's it. They aren't robots. Our special forces are not robots. I've fucking been to pool. I did my SBS briefing course. Normal people. They just pass a few courses and then they're badged. And then you train a lot when most of the training happens when you're actually at your unit. It's not when you're in basic training. That's the bread and butter, isn't it? A lot of civilians seem to think you do your 32 weeks at Lympstone and all of a sudden you're fucking Ahmad, Bruce, Muhammad Ali. And it's not, isn't it? That's the basic bread and butter stuff. Most of your training happens at a unit. I fired pistols once in basic training. You do it plenty when you're at your unit. That's when you sharpen up. We did unarmed combat at the unit. You do hardly any in training.
You think that's a good thing? That they're sending people to their unit without proper training? What the fuck are they doing for 32 weeks?
You do all your stuff you learn is doing your operational deployment training before you go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Northern Ireland, Sierra Leone, wherever you go. You do tons of fucking pre-deployment training. That's when you get good, and that's when your skills and drills get smooth. It's a very lengthy process because people aren't robots, they're not fucking androids. The idea that we've got lads going into a family home and just killing a load of kids is ridiculous. That is where I want to dispute entirely. They're not freaks. If I was on the ground with 6 of my mates and one of them was like, hey, let's go and fucking shoot that 4-year-old, you don't think the other 5 are going to go, fuck off, you mad cunt? Yeah, I'm not saying you might not occasionally get a psycho in the military. They're fallible like anybody else. But the protection from that is, it's not like in the movies where you're going out on the ground like fucking Jason Bourne. The SAS don't operate on their own. They don't just get one bloke, put him in a chopper and go, all right, Dave, go and kick some fucking ass, yo. Woo! And throw him out the fucking helicopter in the middle of Afghanistan. Just go, you crack on, mate. Slot a few cunts and then we'll pick you up in an hour. It doesn't happen. When you're on the ground in Helmand, we're going out in a company plus, talking about 100 guys. SF go out in smaller teams. Might get a section or half a section, but they don't go out on their own. And if you're out on the ground with 4 to 8 men, you're not going to get 8 psychopaths, are you? We're going to be like, right, should we go and flamethrower the fucking orphanage, boys? Yes, nice one. RPG that ice cream van. Doesn't fucking happen. So most of this is bollocks. Just think of it logically. The government and the British military is not interested in killing...
Okay, let's think about this logically. Let's say you're in a hostile area where you are either through a lack of training or a lack of care unable to identify who is a friend and who is enemy unless they're dressed a certain way, which means that if they're not dressed a certain way, they could easily be enemy in disguise. So you come into an area and you know that there's been enemy operations in this area, either from direct observation or from intelligence briefings. So you go around and you're like, well, we know that there's enemy forces in this area, but we can't identify who they are. Which do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're just going to say, well, we don't know, so I guess we have to wait till someone reveals themselves? Or is someone going to step up and say, hey, they're all guilty. They all deserve to die. They're all raghead rats. They all deserve to die. They're all savages. The thing is that from what I understand in military training, I've never been through military training, so I can't say this from personal experience, but from my understanding of it, it doesn't treat that, it doesn't teach you any kind of individual thinking. It's very much a follow your orders and follow the company, the team. So if you got 5 guys who are sweeping through a village, and you're like, we know there's ISIS here somewhere, and say there's someone who moves wrong, misunderstands an instruction, because as my new friend Abu Hashish has pointed out, the military people in Iraq couldn't speak the language very well. They spoke with a different dialect that made it difficult for them to understand. And as we've seen multiple times, even people who ostensibly share a language can misunderstand instructions and commands, especially if tensions are high and guns are involved. Let's consider the George Floyd video. Then what we're looking at here is a definite situation where people will be told to do something, misunderstand it, do something different, and that is interpreted as a hostile action. Then someone opens fire and it's a bloodbath. That is how a lot of these things happen. And that's ignoring a kind of unofficial status of everyone is an enemy, so treat everyone like an enemy combatant. Which, it may not be official policy, but it's definitely the way a lot of people behave over there.
Children, because they know in the long run that makes you lose the war. That creates more insurgents. You kill babies, you create more insurgents. That's why we have such strict Card Alpha rules of engagement. We don't do it. Command doesn't want you to do it, and 99% of the boots on the ground don't want to do it. So think of it logically. That's what I want to talk about. Let's talk about exceptions to the rule. This video that Sparkle O'Haw, like the name, sent me, I watched it as promised, because she said the SAS executed children. Didn't happen. I'm sorry, that didn't happen. They do not execute a child. Why? Who wants you to do that? And which serving soldier wants to do that? How did they do it? Fuck, a 3-year-old blow his head off. Come on. Even I'd be concerned about guilt and shame if I did that. And I am a horrible, horrible bastard. So it's not happening. Now is where I'm going to meet her halfway and concede when some of the arguments have merit. Sergeant Al Blackman, Royal Marine, if you never heard of him, several years ago, he shot a critically wounded insurgent, right? When I first heard he'd been charged with murder, I assumed he'd killed a civilian. That wasn't the case. They were doing the patrols, he engaged them first, they returned fire, badly wounded him, and then he was caught on video while clearing the compounds, coming across the critically injured Afghan who was dying anyway, had multiple gunshot wounds.
Completely unrelated to what this idiot is saying, this is a really nice thing to see on Turf Island. Pronoun stickers for transgender children in schools. That's cool. I like that. That's really cool.
He was caught on video saying, "Shall we waste a fucking FFD on this oxygen thief here, boys?" And they went, "Fuck it." And he gave him the old fucking 2 in the head. Afterwards he said, "I've just brought the Geneva Convention there, boys, keep it quiet." One of the silly cunts didn't, shared the fucking video, and I believe it was a fireman who rang the police. Fucking weasel. Anyway, that is not acceptable, and that's unprofessional. But this is what I want to talk about.
Listen to his language here. Let's back that up a little bit.
Fuck it. And he gave him the old fucking 2 in the head. Afterwards he said, "I've just brought the Geneva Convention there, boys, keep it quiet." One of the silly cunts didn't, shared the fucking video, and I believe it was a fireman who rang the police. Fucking weasel.
So, he talks about how he killed ostensibly an enemy combatant, and admitted that he broke the Geneva Convention, and then a fireman ran to the police. Fucking weasel. So, at one side of his mouth, he's condemning the actions of this Blackman for killing this person. But at the other side, he's making it clear that even though he did something wrong, he shouldn't have faced any repercussions for it. The person who ratted him out to the police, who made this video public, was the bad person here. So you can't tell me that he did something wrong, that it was an extreme situation or what have you, and then condemn the person who made it public so that he would get repercussions. Both of those people can't be wrong.
Anyway, that is not acceptable and that's unprofessional. But this is what I want to talk about, extenuating circumstances. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen. It will sometimes happen. But these people are dealing with extremely stressful situations. And one of the reasons I left the Royal Marines, I was extremely annoyed about this type of thing. Because when we were deploying, I felt as if Command was more interested in the lives of the Afghans than they were of ours. And now I'm older, I understand that with nuance. When you're an old fucker, you see the big picture, and I do understand it. Because for every civilian or innocent person you kill, you create 50 more fighters. Their culture is all about revenge. That's why they do it.
God, he teeters on the cusp of having a realization and then just completely shuts back into Chudville. It's not their culture. It's not their history or their religion or whatever other bullshit you're going to use to determine this. It's radicalization. We have systematically, over the last 20 years, destroyed infrastructure and structure and society in these countries. So what happens? People with maybe more radical ideas against the people who've destroyed the country rise up and talk about how we need to take back our country. We need to be strong like we were in the past when no one fucked with us, even though there was never a time really where the Middle East can point to where they were strong, unless we go back like 1,000 years. At least strong enough to repel the might of Western imperialist armies, unfortunately. But the point is that they make these arguments, and there's no one making as persuasive counter arguments, because there aren't any good counter arguments. They believe that this is what they need to do to take back their home. And so, while I don't agree with ISIS or their methods, I understand them. And I understand the material conditions which created them. And when you kill an innocent civilian, and even when you kill a combatant, it adds fuel to the fire, which further creates more radical extremists.
I do understand it now. It was a bitter pill for me to swallow. A bitter pill for me to swallow when I was 26. Now I do get it. It's hard, but you have to be professional. But that's what Blackman was dealing with. Al Blackman, seeing his men die. You know, they were weary, desperate, in a fucking rough place in Helmand province. Troop numbers were dwindling, and they'd physically seen their men dying. I think he'd lost 7 blokes in their company. And they said one of them, yeah, they hadn't recovered his corpse, and the body parts were strung up to taunt the inhabitants of the base. Stuff like that affects a man. I'm sure Sparkle O'Hare would agree with me. It would affect me. I never seen anybody get strung up. That's fucking bad. I was lucky like that. We lost guys, killed or injured, blew up or shot, but I never dealt with anything as bad as that. It would affect you. To put him up on a murder charge without considering any of them extenuating circumstances is why I was so angry and bitter with the military for as long as I was.
So, mitigating circumstances and extenuating circumstances, when you have video of him committing the crime, clear video of him committing the crime, means that those circumstances will shape his punishment. Now, I'm betting he's about to argue that he shouldn't have been charged because of these circumstances, which I wholly disagree with. Now, maybe there are some mitigating circumstances that should lessen his punishment from, life in prison to, like, the 25 years I think he said he got sentenced to. Sure, yeah, there are definitely extenuating and mitigating circumstances. There's definitely effects that these situations have on your mind that force you to act in ways that you wouldn't in other circumstances. But you still committed this action, and there still needs to be repercussions for it.
Bitter and twisted and angry. that they wouldn't think of extenuating circumstances. They do it with everyone. They do it with crackheads, burglars, rapists, and murderers. But when a soldier does it, they just done him for murder straight away. And me, I could see it.
See, this is a false equivalency. When a rapist pleads that he was rape is a bad example. There's not really many mitigating circumstances. But when someone kills their lover because they came in a fit of rage and found them in bed with someone else, and in a fit of rage they killed both of them, they don't get off scot-free. They serve a lesser charge. They recognize that there are extenuating circumstances, but they still catch a murder charge. Maybe a lesser murder charge than what some people think they should get. But mitigating circumstances are there. It's the same in the military. If there's mitigating circumstances to your action, then you're gonna get a lesser sentence. But it's still murder. You still get charged with murder. If someone was in civilian life and came across someone and they were in a stressful situation, had all these extenuating circumstances in civilian life, and they killed someone, those circumstances would also be used to lower the charge, but they would still be fucking charged.
10 miles away. At worst, it's manslaughter. He didn't plan to kill the man. He unlawfully killed him in a manner where he shouldn't have killed him. He should.
No. So, the only charge, at least under U.S. law, as far as I understand it, which necessitates proving premeditation, is first-degree murder. There are the lesser degrees of murder are when you take an action which you know can be lethal and do it anyway, and it results in someone's death. Manslaughter is when you take an action that couldn't reasonably be construed as causing someone's death. That's why if you hit someone with a car, but you didn't mean to, it was dark, they were wearing dark clothing, whatever extenuating circumstances, that's why you get charged with manslaughter and not murder. But if you point a gun at someone's head and pull the trigger twice, that is murder because you know that can kill someone. Now, it may not be first-degree murder because you may not have premeditated it. And if it's not to their head, if it's to some other part of their body, you may have a reasonable understanding that it may not kill them. You just intended to wound them, but it killed them anyway. That would be a lesser charge of murder, but it's still murder.
Should have administered first aid. But considering all they'd been through, at worst it was manslaughter with diminished responsibility. And that would happen if you came home from work, if you're a plumber.
Oh yeah, Abu Hashish, I know that ISIS isn't trying to take back Iraq, but I know that a lot of the rhetoric that was used, especially at the beginning, was the idea of taking back their home. But yeah, I understand.
And you come home from work and there's a guy fisting your wife in the living room and you beat him to death with your tool bag. They would consider the extenuating circumstances. You probably wouldn't get done for murder because you didn't plan in advance to kill the guy. This is why I was angry.
Is this a difference between US and UK law? UK definition of murder. Okay. Yes, thank you for fixing my typo. Okay, murder is an offense of the common law of England and Wales. It's considered the most serious form of homicide. If one person kills another with the intention to cause either death or serious injury unlawfully. So he's wrong here. If you come in and beat someone to death, that would be a murder charge. You meant to harm them, and you meant to cause serious injury. I was going to term malice aforethought. That would require neither malice nor premeditation. Many killings done with a high degree of subjective recklessness were treated as murder from the 12th. Yeah. So he's wrong in both US and UK law. It's not manslaughter just because you didn't premeditate it. If you walk up and put a gun to someone's head, it's murder. Now, whether it's first, second, or third degree, that's where the extenuating circumstances come in.
Soldiers to a higher standard than our own civilians, much higher, and he should never have been up on a murder charge. The Navy and the upper echelons of the Royal Marines and the British Army and the political establishment are fucking wrong, and they know they're wrong, and the general public knows it's wrong, because if he was a smackhead who knifed someone after an argument in the pub, there would be many extenuating circumstances considered. It'd be unlikely you get done for murder in those situations. To have a man who's watched his men and his young men die around him and dealt with that, and the guy shot.
Okay, I'm literally done here. I don't want to listen to this Britbonger's accent anymore, and he's just gonna make apologia for military people killing civilians or anyone else and not getting fair treatment. But if some crackhead kills someone, they get extenuating circumstances out the arse. I'm done. This is some bullshit. Because extenuating circumstances come first in the decision of what to charge, which is true, he was arguing that correctly, but then in the sentencing. That's why when you have like a confession or someone on tape doing something, they'll introduce extenuating circumstances to lower the sentence. This is the big deal about the Derek Chauvin charging. People wanted to charge him with first-degree murder, and when he was upgraded to second-degree murder, a lot of people talked about how that may be overcharging him because they can't prove second-degree murder. But they had a slam dunk on third-degree murder. But of course, the difference in there's a big difference between the potential sentencing for second-degree murder versus third-degree murder. But apparently the DA thinks they can prove second degree, so, hopefully they're legitimately trying to get a conviction there and not just overcharging him so he gets off. Which is a strategy they can employ. But this is the mitigating circumstances, especially for someone in uniform, are used to mitigate the sentence. But if you put a gun to someone's head, no matter the mitigating circumstances, no matter how out of your head you are, it's still murder. And having watched your mates die doesn't mitigate that. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.